starting, and we're live. So yes, welcome to everyone who's turned up so far. We have 5 waiting. I'm really happy that we've actually got something out for once. We've been talking about doing a live show for quite some time because our last one was last summer, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was last summer when it was me and you doing a live show.
No, and there was Philip Rose.
Yeah, Philip Rose. Of course, it was Philip Rose. It was Philip Rose, the controversy on punching a Nazi. So yeah, it's fun to be back. And I can see we've got some people already commenting. Hello. Oh, it's Church of Chris. Haven't seen you around for a while. So yeah, we've got some questions already here, so we'll just start with those.
Allahu Akbar.
If anybody has any other questions that they want to ask us during the show, then by all means just post them. We'll see them down here. And yeah, let me go docs for this 2 secs. What? Oh, bloody hell, there's more than 5. Oh, bloody hell, 21 watching now. Where did you all come from? Okay, that's ridiculous. Okay, I didn't expect that to grow. Hello, Covert, Old Scratch, Anaroya, Chris M. What? How do you say?
Covert.
No, not that. Sergey.
Sergey Saviliev. No, Saviliev.
Forgive our ignorance. Out of the woodwork, yes, I am sorry for that. Anyway, let's go on with... No, it wasn't evolution, you know, it was, what was it? Pathogenesis, the idea that pathogens just emerged rather than actually abiogenesis, which is the formation of life from inorganic materials or organic materials.
What are your all favorite philosophers?
Oh, okay. We'll start with one from you lot then, and then we'll head on to any extra questions if we need. Do you want to take this one first? I
think mine would be okay. Again, I haven't read any philosopher's work to the fullest extent, but mine would be Chanakya, who was an Indian philosopher, and he was also, I'm forgetting which king, but he was an advisor to one of the kings, and he was one of the first proponents of dividing religion from politics. And I've even forgotten most of his works, but I do remember I was quite impressed with what I read. This was like 10 years ago when I read one of his works.
Me, just Bertrand Russell. I absolutely love the book In Praise of Idleness. The essays gathered in there are brilliant. And of course, Russell's teapot has been immeasurable in how useful it's been to my line of work. That's the one that states that if I claim that there was some celestial teapot circling, the sun between Earth and Jupiter, I couldn't say that since you can't prove it doesn't exist, that it must exist. I wish you'd assume it exists. You'd expect me to show some evidence. This is then used as an analogy for God and the whole, burden of proof, etc. So yeah, and just for those who don't know, this is Udita. Udita is my partner. I see someone noted. Good afternoon, Essence and friend. I'm not Essence of Four. I am Peter/Ethel Thurston. This is Udita Chakrabarti. We are both the admins of Essence of Four. I know this is sort of the same thing that Seth says on the Thinking Atheist. He's not the Thinking Atheist. He works at Thinking Atheist. It's sort of the same with me. So Udita is kind of the unsung hero. She does a lot of the background stuff. She now deals with all the copyright stuff since I keep getting rather charged about it. Yeah, so she also reads a lot of my scripts, she also reviews a lot of my work, and she does produce her own content as well.
Sometimes.
But it's mostly support role. She's also been growing. Why don't you tell them about yourself and your internship?
Oh yeah, so I used to be a lawyer. I'm still registered as a lawyer, but I'm trying to move into human rights, and a few months back, 3-4 months back, I was interning for Feminism in India, which is an organization that, well, as the name says, deal with feminist issues here, women's issues, and mostly intersectional feminism. And I was writing for them as well as learning how to be a better social media coordinator. My internship's gotten over, but I'm still in touch with them. I still intend to continue writing for them. Some of you may have read stuff.
It's just people coming in at the moment. Edita also voices some of the stuff that I read out, like comments, etc. I think it was you who read the Kate the Great comments that I responded to before responding to her video. Yes. Kate the Great, for those who don't know, is the nursing assistant, the registered the registered nursing assistant who declared that to deter people from abortions, you know, unsafe abortions, if safe abortions were criminalized, what the government should effectively do is tear out their organs and also execute any doctor who helps or assists. So yeah, very, very scary stuff.
We have two related questions. Are you vegan?
But we've got other questions to go to first. We're not doing it all from here straight away. We've got questions. We got asked ahead of time. So I'm adding them to a list. If you see me doing typing whilst Edita's talking, that's because I'm adding to a list of questions that I've got. So, MC Peterson Smith asked, this is a while ago, while humanism does not have a doctrine, what are the common ideas amongst other humanists you feel should be reformed? And I thought this was quite an interesting one. Before, I actually used to associate quite heavily with what was then termed the British Humanist Association. It's now termed just, I think, British Humanist, isn't it? It's changed its name recently. I used to associate quite heavily with it, but I got tired of the same old talking points. I got tired of the way that students were presented. I got tired of the way that the conversation around, you know, freedom of speech was presented, the same old cliches. I got tired of the way that it was pretty much being hijacked by right-wing speakers. And that right there, the sort of people know that, you know, freedom of speech is a great thing. It's a necessity for any democratic society. But freedom of speech does not mean you can then force people to pay out money to force them then to listen to someone speak. That's not how freedom of speech works. I can't hold you at ransom to watch my channel and then pay me on Patreon. You know, I can't do that. But that's the sort of way that the BHA and, you know, it seemed to view the idea of free speech, that you could actually force someone to pay to listen to someone else. And another thing, our university came up as a red in the whole free speech review that was carried out. There was this review in the UK of UK universities, and our university came out as a red. And the reason it came out as a red is because we've got a university mascot, University of Surrey, we've got stag as our icon, so we've got a deer mascot, stag mascot. And there are rules for when you wear that suit, namely, don't smoke in it, don't drink alcohol, because being in a mascot suit and drinking and smoking is not a good idea. There were also rules about, you know, keeping university spirit, but remember, this wasn't a student-owned suit that people would come and legislated about. This was the University of Surrey Student Union suit, and they were discussing, if you want to hire out the suit, you can do that. These are our conditions. That was apparently a violation of free speech. And, you know, that sort of nitpickiness really got to me. And I just then, that's why I started referring to myself as a grassroots humanist. So I hope that gives you something. I don't know if you've got anything to add.
I really don't have anything to add, because humanism in India is only just starting out. I only know, I mean, it's not starting out. I do know some members of the local free thinkers group who are quite aged, and they're associated with the Indian Humanist Union, IHU. And I don't know how long it's been around, but obviously it's not as, its outreach is not as great as the BHA in the UK. I've often wondered, and this is after a discussion with somebody I know, do animal rights come under humanism? Like,
I have seen discussions. I mean, when we were at university, Mike Parker, some of you may remember, Captain Mikul, you know, they carried out a brilliant talk for our university on the ethics of animals and veganism. Someone actually asked us, are we vegan in the chat?
Those were the
no,
questions
we're not vegan. I'm not vegan. I don't know if you're not vegan.
I was
you
vegetarian.
don't seem to be vegan.
I was vegetarian for some time. My dad's family were pure vegetarians at one point of time, like 20, 30 years ago.
You should hear what pure vegetarian in India means.
Well, pure vegetarian means you can have dairy, but you can't have no meat, no fish, no eggs even. You can't even have stuff like onion, garlic, leeks, and some other stuff from the same family of food, because apparently there's stuff that could heat up your body. So in the ancient traditional Ayurvedic practice, those were classified as equal to meat insofar as this heating up is concerned. So yeah, you don't have that. Oh, there's also one lentil, the red lentils. Yeah, that also comes under the same.
It's a very restricted. It seems like it's trying to bleed out every little bit of enjoyment you get out of your diet. No onions and garlic. No, that's true. That's something I found very weird. We eat tons of onions and garlic over here. I go crazy for the garlic paste, because most of the paste that you get prepared over here is onion and garlic and ginger paste. And I'm not a big fan of ginger, so thankfully I know somewhere that does pre-packaged garlic paste, because I've made my own. But we adore onion and garlic in this household. We're finding out some people have rules against that. It's just I could never live that way.
It's not with everyone, though. I mean, there are different levels of vegetarianism over here. There are some vegetarians who advocate over-vegetarianism. So it's okay to have eggs. There are some who advocate that it's okay to have eggs only if it's in something like cakes, but you can't have it on its own. There are some who will not have eggs, but onions and garlic are fine. And then comes the pure vegetarians.
But the sad thing is, it's also linked to being a widow. Very often you can be expected in certain circles if you're a widow.
It was traditionally, yes. My grandmother, so I come from a typically Orthodox Brahmin family. And my grandmother, when my grandfather died, I remember she gave up everything. So no meat, nothing. And then she even stopped taking onion and garlic, which severely affected her health. So, but she wouldn't touch it. Like, till the end of her days, we kind of tried to force her into having onion and garlic, because the doctor said that's the minimum she should be having. She wouldn't touch it. These days, it really depends. I mean, traditionally, widowhood was associated with stuff like that, but these days you do have widows who don't. People are coming out of that mentality, and thankfully so. But it's still a mixed bag.
Moving on to the next question, Joshua, what would you say to someone who considers themselves an atheist, yet still has a deeply seated fear from being raised Catholic? They live every day normally, but pings of fear hit them, and they are worried that they have made the wrong choice, leaving their faith. Oh, that's quite a difficult one. The way that I left the faith was, upon assessing the ethical qualities of God compared to the problem of evil, etc. And a lot of that has to do with the torture, the violence, the smiting, etc. That was why I left. I don't exactly know how to comment on someone who has that fear. I understand how, if you've been brought up in a certain way, even if you've been taken out of that environment, something can trigger that sort of response in you. It's sort of like a victim of abuse flinching when someone reaches to hug them, because all they've known is, abuse from people who've got physically close. I can sort of understand that on a more emotional level, as with this. As for what I'd say to them, there's a lot of support out there in talking to people. It can be everyday people, or it can be trained people, either psychiatrists, or thankfully we've now got humanist chaplains starting to emerge. These sort of people can do a lot to sort of talk you through these things. And I know it sounds ridiculous, but just being asked to come back and reassess this idea time and time again, you know, if you're taking through it logically with a guide, eventually over time that can start to heal the process, because you start moving away from needing someone to guide you through this logical process, and you can start doing it on your own. So if you do get these pangs of fear, you can sort of ground yourself, and then hopefully over time they will sort of dissipate. If you want like a simple solution, then consider the fact that many people claim their gods to be just. Well, if there is a just deity, then why would they ever torture you for what your reasoning faculties have led you to, you know, believe or leave said belief? Why would they torture you for that? Okay, I know that's sort of a half patch on the topic, but honestly, that's something that I do tell some people who just need that. You know, give the people what they need, talk to them about these issues further when they're secure. But if they're having an attack, you know, I have no issue bringing up questions like that, even though I don't believe there's such a deity to exist. I will still ask people these questions if I believe it will support them at that very moment. So yeah, we haven't really been looking at the chat. How would you respond?
Well, my story is a bit different. I have studied in a Catholic school, and yes, that fear of hell and God was kind of instilled in us. But when it comes to my family, it's a bit different. It's not so much the fear that I've faced, so I really can't comment on it, but it's more the harassment or the feeling of erasure, because it doesn't even register with my family that I'm an atheist. You know, it's
my existence doesn't even register. Like, they've completely blanked my existence.
Oh, not all of them. That's just my mom.
I know, yeah.
Parents. But I have seen some of my ex-Catholic friends, my ex-Muslim friends as well, and I have seen the way they deal with it is, yes, they do have to hide when it's necessary, because you can only fight when you're out there, right? Sometimes it's just not worth it, just not worth constantly fighting the fear. Sometimes some of the fights have to be done behind the curtain. But that is how they come to one of these groups that we have, you know, the local free thinkers groups, the meetings, the community building stuff. I think more and more people should have those. So these people who do not get to express themselves normally, they remain fearful, they can go to these groups, find the necessary support, and, you know, and finally can maybe hopefully just make their way out of it, or, you know, at least keep themselves sane, because I can imagine how the situation might affect one.
Okay, a little lighter topic. This is from Holly. This is on Facebook.
Holly Wiseman.
Why the hell did you chop off those gorgeous locks of hair, and did you cry afterwards?
Matt asked the same thing.
Okay, Matt asked the same thing. Okay. I went to a wedding, specifically my mother's wedding. She got remarried, so, you know, for her, I just thought, like, my hair was down to here at that point, and it was a mess to deal with. It took a lot more care and cleaning, etc. It didn't look as good as it did in my older videos, so I just thought, you know, I'm not going short. I'm definitely not doing what I did at university. My hair was about this length at college. Then I went to university. I cut it all off, like really, really short. Not quite, you know, cut zero, but basic haircut. And then I hadn't had a haircut until my graduation. And then I finally, that was just a couple inches off, a bit of a trim. And then, of course, with coming over here and again seeing the hassle that I put into such long hair, it doesn't look quite as nice. It looks nice when it bounces on the shoulders, and I'm just teasing people now. It looks nice when it just sits on your shoulders like that, rather than just dangling down. So I thought, okay, well, first of all, my mum likes my hair shorter, so for her, I'll do it. And secondly, I just wanted to do it as well. So I kind of settled on just below shoulder length, and I think it came out quite well. You know, I really like it. It's much lighter. Yeah. It feels nicer. It dries much quicker. So Yeah.
Yeah, I took this one to my salon. Yeah.
Your salon. It's because in the UK, we're based around Aldershot. There's quite a large Nepalese community there. There's some lovely Nepalese hair places, and that's where we went to. So yeah, no, I did not cut my hair because my mum said. I cut my hair because my mum said, and I just wanted to. My mum's been saying I should cut my hair for years, but I've outright rejected it, and she would have preferred it much, much shorter. But it's
also the fact that it's going to get really hot in India, and I myself am considering cutting off my hair, but I don't trust people with mine, so it's curly, so it's different. But
last year we arrived in September, just coming out of summer, so we got a bit of the heat, but we didn't get much of the heat for long. So it's going to be completely different as we're starting to head into summer now. Okay, as Europeans, what goes through your heads when you look at Americans and where we are on gun control?
That's you. No, I'm not European.
I know you're not European. Oh, gosh. I don't know why they asked as Europeans. I thought they might have asked as European station. I know that. I know you're not British. I didn't realise. Anyway, as a European, I just can't believe it, and it's not just the whole debacle itself with the gun control. It's like the stuff they resort to, attacking victims, using first of all homophobic slurs against them, claiming that they're skin-headed lesbians, as if that is an insult to be a lesbian. Then there's also, of course, the photoshopping. They have been photoshopping them, tearing up, gun targets, tearing that up. They Photoshop the Constitution, and so it looks like they're tearing up the Constitution. And seeing just some of the shit supposed adults have been saying, people on the news, it's just ridiculous. Honestly, I've tried talking some sense into some Americans because sometimes it crosses over. I've got a lot of American contacts, and I see them posting a lot, and when they post, it naturally draws, the opposition. And I've tried talking to some of them, and honestly, how vitriolic they get about it, it is so shocking. It is, it's a cult-like mentality. It's not a religious cult,
but it's so defensive, isn't it?
It is. It's almost like the sort of, again, gun control doesn't mean having your guns taken away. If you're a responsible gun owner, then you're a responsible gun owner. Okay, we understand that. Good for you. But where's the problem in having background checks, regular training, people come around your house to make sure that it's locked up properly, all this sort of stuff. I mean, you have to get MOTs for your car, you have to have insurance on that, but no one thinks that is taking away your cars. But when it comes to guns, everything changes. It's just... Then again, I'm British, so of course I just want to get rid of all your guns so we can evade the game. So yeah,
You're part Dutch.
I'm part Dutch as well.
You're half Dutch.
Anyway, is there anything you want to add as a non-European?
As a non-European, well, we really have strict gun control laws over here, but we do have a lot of abuse in the sense because this is India. There are, I won't say loopholes, especially now, because gun control is really strict, but you do have a lot of illegal arms dealing, and I think not directly related to gun control, but regarding how defensive people get when in America when you talk about issues like this, and how it gets broiled in a sense of nationalism, a sense of the American identity. I find that very similar to what happens here in India on other issues, of course, but it's like you can't think of health, safety, and human rights beyond that sense of national identity, beyond that sense of national pride. And I don't know if it's because I don't know. I don't know why there's this overemphasis on how gun ownership is apparently, I don't know, it's a right. I mean, it's something we have over here, like with regard to freedom to practice religion. So I see the same thing. It's that people often confuse that freedom with religious discrimination, and they're like, oh, we're a secular country, everything's allowed, and people should be allowed to have Sharia laws because this is a secular country. And I've seen that same thing happening in America. I don't know why this happens in both countries. I don't know if it's because of a shared history of colonialism, because even in that case, the two countries have a separate, that history's followed separate paths in both. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Moving on. Oh, scroll back up. This is from Mark. Have you ever had any of the victims of your wrecking ball change their viewpoint, or have the courage to admit that you've taught them something? Yes. There was one individual, I'm trying to remember their name actually. They not only came to me and admitted that they were wrong, that they'd deconverted, but they had started a YouTube channel with the intention of, well, pretty much doing what I do. Sadly, they didn't keep it up, so, that was actually, it was kind of funny how it came to light, because obviously they saw their video was still up. That made them anxious. I can fully understand making past mistakes make you anxious. But rather than trying to contact me and tell me, hey, I've changed my views, can you please remove this video? They filed a DMCA takedown. And I remember I responded in such, my usual way, because I'm so used to going through this now. I was getting ready, and then it turned out, actually, no, this person is just generally, they just didn't know how to go about things. I talked to them, we talked we talked things down a bit. And then, after I saw they were quite genuine, after I saw they were quite genuine, I did finally remove the video, because, again, I'm not here to hurt them. I don't want to make them feel bad about their past views. So, yeah, there are people who have done that, and it's not the only one. That's just the most extreme one that I can think of. I mean, there have been other people who have come and contacted me. Recently, we had the person, what do you mean? And he removed his video. I don't know if he removed his video simply because of the traffic he was getting, or if he removed his video genuinely because he realized that he'd made a lot of mistakes in that video. So sometimes I don't get the full picture. Sometimes I get messages out the blue. But, so I have had some people who have said that, the people I've responded to have said it's helped me a lot. However, as you then asked, oh, no, this is the next question, actually. Never mind, we'll go on to the next question. Sorry. Unless that's one that you can really answer.
I think somebody who really came up to me and told me, because most people in this channel deal with Peter directly, they don't deal with me, but somebody who did this was, I'm not going to name the person for their safety, but they were from Bangladesh, and they're an ex-Muslim, and they told me, how Peter was responsible for helping them not only question Islam, but actually move their way out of it. And that for me was a huge takeaway, especially seeing somebody from Bangladesh. I mean, Bangladesh is a place I really identify with, being of Bangladeshi origin myself. So that was very nice. It was 2 years back, probably.
Mm-hmm. Yes, moving on to the next question, which I got confused because it's sort of the same area, but it's slightly different. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they actually following on from above. This is a different person, Robert. Do you ever think they will, or is your primary care for the audience that views your videos, Freedom of Thought Initiative official? Is it more important to you to demonstrate to your subjects the errors, the audience, or do you see them as of equal importance? Mm. When I started, I was very naive in thinking that I could help convince people of their perspective. That rarely happens. These days, I realize that rarely happens. But I still think that my work has merit in specifically those who are watching from the sidelines, and also those who are not watching from the sidelines but want to learn arguments. Because especially since I've been referencing, I've seen a lot of people growing in their own arguments, because I very often get the same sort of people come back now and then to my channel, and if they're theists there, they will discuss with theists, and I see how their arguments have grown. And whilst it happens on my channel, part of me hopes that, you know, I might have helped them out with 1 or 2 points. But, you know, I think teaching people who want to discuss the topic more from any background, you know, it doesn't have to necessarily be from some very Southern American sort of background. It can be literally anywhere, because theists are everywhere and there are apologists everywhere. You know, if they want to learn from resources, my videos, I think, do a great job in that. And then, of course, if there are those on the sidelines who are either thinking of deconverting or have deconverted or just don't know much about the topics, they are the sort of people that give me the warm fuzzy, as I sometimes call. I do often get, especially from the Middle East, I've got quite a substantial Middle Eastern audience, and a lot of them contact me, especially with my work on various Islamic apologists, and they say that it's helped them a lot, first of all, find out more about topics which have always been taboo, but then also come to associate with philosophies, secular philosophies that they haven't heard very much about. So that, for me, mostly is the most important thing. The person I'm responding to is the least likely person to actually change their position. It's great when they do, and I try to make my responses as keyed into that as possible. But then again, there are also those cases where you find someone who you just know will never give up their position. And what's more is what they're preaching is so vile that honestly, you have to sort of use them as an example of an abhorrent view, and you have to go all out on them. There was the guy last year who was openly boasting about the fact that he makes his children fear physical violence, specifically with hell. And then, of course, we just had Kate the Great with the whole ripping out people's organs, you know. There are people who you just see, and whilst I would love for them to come around, by what they're spouting, I don't know if they ever will. So you just have to sort of burn them for the sake of the people that suffer the same sort of abuse, you know. Children who are raised in families where they're told they will suffer, they will burn, they will be tortured, and for those who have had anti-abortion zealots go after them, sometimes for their sake, you need to tear into some of these absolutely vile individuals and just make an example of them, you know, say that this is not okay and this will never be okay. So I think that can be quite important.
Well, when I generally deal with such people, I try and observe if they show indications of naivety, because very often I've seen these people have actually researched the arguments on the other side, on our side. They've gone through all the stuff that we have to present, but they just simply choose to ignore it, because it's not so much about what ideology they actually follow. It's more about how much power they derive from it, or how much validation they derive from it, or, you know, in case of a lot of homophobic or transphobic people, how much, you know, just that inability to move on, that denial. So with such people, I generally do not, unless I have to, I generally do not waste my energy. What I generally aim to do is for people, like you said, like people who watch things from the sidelines, because they need to see, because people who actually want to know, who genuinely want to know, they need to understand the arguments on either side, and they need to evaluate the thing. So it's for their sake, addressing them, that I would approach such a matter. I mean, it's, yeah.
Okay, moving on. I'm trying to keep up with your questions here. It's getting busier and busier. People, slow down a bit.
Are you a son of Thurman Trees and Qualia?
Oh yeah, we're finally onto live questions. Are you a son of Thurman Trees and Qualia Soup? No. Neo-skeptic, are you a vegan? No.
No.
Okay. Now we're green at EssenceOfThought. So which go first? Why do you think humans have fetishes? Do you think there is any kind of advantage to having them? They also then asked, they elaborated a little bit. Some say that it's like having a hobby, but I can see advantages to having a hobby, but not a fetish. Someone said it could help avoid STDs. Well, it depends on what the fetish is.
Yeah.
If it's BDSM, there's a great trust exercise there with partners, having safe words, etc. There's a lot of trust, and a lot of people who are into BDSM see it as that. They see it as almost the maximum degree of trust you can have in your partner. You're in a very compromising position, you can't do anything. So there's a bit of a trust exercise, and that helps some couples. When it comes to house parties and orgies, I've seen some brilliant stuff done there. First of all, it can be a great way for people to experience different things. Very often, if it's done right, it can be a very secure area. I remember I had a friend, she was blind, and she went to some of these parties. And, she naturally had fears about people fetishizing her lack of sight, because there are people who fetishize people with disabilities, and that's a bit different. That's similar to fetishizing, for example, African physique, in that you see like in old colonial materials. And she did have an experience where she went to one of these parties, but thankfully the hosts and the rest of the people instantly caught on to that, and they completely shut it down. And she was able to experience different things, that she before wasn't sure she would be able to experience. So it can be a great thing. These are only a couple. There are lots of fetishes out there. It depends on what you're discussing.
Yeah.
Again, it depends on what degree.
I think it comes down to whether your fetish involves, not taking the consent of the other person, because there are certain fetishes that cross that boundary. I've had somebody who I used to date, and this was online, but they told me something along the lines that they wanted to cut open my arm and drink my blood. They had a blood fetish, amongst other things that I happened to stumble on. And obviously, this is not something I would consent to, but this is what they wanted. So I think it's only in cases like these. Like I also know people who have schoolboy or schoolgirl fetish, but it depends on how you're acting that out. Some people take that to an extreme. They take, that whole minority, person being a minor and not being able to consent.
Sorry, I'm laughing because of the chat, not because of the... Sorry.
Yeah, they take that entire thing, their fetish includes that entire thing. That probably I would have a problem with. But if you're somebody who's okay with a consenting adult, or if you're above whatever your country's laws are on the consenting age, if you're above that age and you just dress up as a school-going person, if you look young, I think that's okay, that's safe. To each his own in that case.
There's also a discussion to be had about outlets there,
What's that?
Like role play. Role play is a big part of fetish,
Rape fantasies.
Is it better to have role play between consenting partners who know each other very well, or do we risk,
You also have to see how much of role play bleeds into your real life, because there are people who can't differentiate the two.
That's the thing. There's always people who can't differentiate between anything.
Yeah.
So it's not an easy answer question. This is one that we used to, because I did sociology, culture, and media, of course, we looked into porn, and there's so many different areas of porn, from feminist porn right down to rape fantasies. And, we discussed this sort of stuff. What about typically viewed as, Eastern child materials as well? We discussed that, stereotypically viewed that way. And how does that factor into everything? There's been this big controversy now recently with sex robots, and do they further objectification? So all very big topics on their own, and I'm sorry, but I don't think we're going to be able to do them one by one.
We need a separate video.
Yeah, we need a series of videos. Hey, that's what we can do. We can do live series, and we can look at one fetish at a time and investigate it, sort of, Anyway, what are our thoughts on animal rights?
just covered that. That was the question I was talking about.
Oh, okay. Like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah, when we were talking about vegetarianism.
Right. Okay. Back then, you meant
yeah.
okay. What's our general thoughts on? But I
Humanism
didn't
and
really
hangout.
give that cover. Personally, you know, I'm all for factory meats. I believe it's the way forward. I believe it's the way to improve our society. I do not hold necessarily that killing animals for food is unethical. I'm willing to be argued against on that topic. You know, again, Captain McCall did a brilliant breakdown of the psychology and the scans involved with different methods of killing. So, you know, I try to shop consciously. Oddly enough, if you're in the UK, get halal chicken. And I say this because in the UK, halal chicken, 100% of chicken that's halal has been stun killed.
Yeah.
It's like not stun killed, stunned, then killed. It can't be stun killed, but it can be stunned prior to killing. That's the misconception many people have. Many people say halal can't be stunned. No, that's kosher. Halal can actually be stunned so long as the stunning isn't the act which does the killing.
Yeah.
That's the difference. And I think it was 80% of beef. It might be actually 40. I can't remember if it was 80 or 40. That don't take on that one. But when it comes to chicken, every farm checked for halal was stunned and then killed. I think it was shock stunned. I'm getting a tongue twister here. So that's one of the strange dietary habits I picked up in actually specifically going for halal chicken. And many people watching this are probably like, what? You did what?
Yeah, but not here in India though. I mean,
oh yeah, it's different from country to country. This is only for the UK. So if you're in the US, don't trust what I say.
Traditionally, we're not even allowed to have halal, like in my family. But I made that exception for the UK because I know about the stunning thing. In India, well, if I don't have a choice, then maybe. But I generally try to avoid halal meat.
Yeah. No factory farms, agreed. But again, factory meat is what I'm after. I should say vatted meat, to be clear. That's where we should be going. Fully for that, not just from, you know, if we can produce the same stuff whilst removing the nervous system, which if God was smart and loving, they would have done to begin with. You know, that's great. You know, first of all, it's less waste, and secondly, it is more ethical. You know, that's the thing. Not every decision is, if it's unethical to some degree, then we must stop doing it, sort of thing. It kind of weighs out. But yeah, I'm very fond of the idea of vatted meats. So I'm looking forward to that. I want to try some purely with a curiosity. I remember when they did the first taste test, and it flopped. It was the first burger tested, and it flopped. And then they realized, oh, it's because we didn't program the cells to produce fat cells. And fat cells are what gives meat a lot of its flavor. So it was quite a bland bit of beef. So, you know, then they accounted for that. So anyway, moving on. Oh, done that. Have I been to Norway lately? No, I've not actually been to Norway since, was it last summer?
Last June.
Yeah, I went for just a short visit that time.
A couple of weeks.
That was just to see my grandparents, my uncle, and the rest of my family before coming over here. Excuse me.
I also want to tell the same person that yes, Alita is correct.
So, yeah, I haven't been to Norway recently. We're hoping to get to Norway recently, but with visa stuff, it's.
I haven't been ever.
Yeah, she hasn't been ever, but she did get to meet my dad in Portsmouth. My dad came with my stepmom, and they got to spend some time together.
Yeah.
And it was my stepmom and Judita were there doing tequila shots whilst me and my father were sitting in this old pub.
Like this.
Like, God, what are they doing? What have we done? We've put these two elements together. We should not have done this. It's a brilliant pub, by the way. If you're ever in Portsmouth, hole in the wall, check it out.
Yeah.
We had a brilliant debate about what the hole actually was, because it's got a hole outside just below the door. Dad caught on instantly. He knew what it was. They were putting out the hypothesis, Judita and Kirsten, they were putting out the hypothesis that, you know, it's to put milk in, it's to put newspapers in.
I was partly right, because now these days...
It was originally, but what it was originally and what it was intention-wise, it was workers working at the docks.
Boot scraper.
It was a boot scraper, because of course they'd have manure, etc., all over the docks. So yeah, if you're ever in Portsmouth, hole in the wall. Good
now
place
it's
to
used
check
for
out.
newspapers and milk.
Yeah, but that's not what it's originally for.
Well, we're both right. Okay.
Anyway,
Nick Logo.
also, to what extent do you agree with the statement that perceived randomness is just a lack of knowledge about the universe? Do you want to take this one? So
Holy shit! I don't know. I don't even know how to answer that.
Well, this depends on how we get to quantum randomness, and yes, all models will ultimately be inaccurate, and I believe it was Qualia Soup put out, or it might be Theorem and Trees put out a video on this recently. I can't remember.
Yeah.
All models are somewhat reductionist, and that's just perception in general. Our perceptions will be reductionist. We are, hardwired by evolution to see patterns where patterns don't actually exist. That's why so many people look around them and go, here's the evidence for God. How can you say that this was blind random chance? As to what degree of clarity we can get to, I don't know. It's almost like an hourglass, this hourglass of clarity where this little bit in the middle is where we have the most clarity, and that's probably mathematics. And then you get two types of sciences going out. You get one as, we start looking at more macro scale. That's when you enter chaos theory, because there's so many variables going into something that predicting things becomes ridiculous. As you get larger and larger scale, it becomes less and less clear. Then you have the opposite, which is going down to the quantum scale. And as you get closer and closer to the quantum scale, atomic decay, etc., again, clarity is lost. So yeah, I don't know. Quantum, I don't know if we're going to hit a hard limit soon with how much we can actually study as, a species within a universe. But with the other end, whole chaos, etc., I think we can grow our knowledge and programming quite far, our algorithms to understand the world. So yeah.
Marco Faraday.
If someone defines God as thought, are you an atheist with respect to such definitions of God? Why would you use the definition of atheist in that sense? That's just like...
But there are strains of Hindu groups who actually follow that logic. My father was one of them. He used to try and quantify God in scientific terms and tell us, oh, it's literally just what do you think is, it's a figment of imagination, yes, but it's still something that you give power to. I was like, well, God is supposed to be a figment of imagination. I don't even know how that logic follows. I've also seen this pattern of thought being followed in the neo-pagan communities, especially the people who follow paganism, but they, as far as God as a supreme being is concerned, they tend to be more on the atheistic side of things.
So I was just reading other things. I mean, again, it seems like the sort of Oprah thing. Oh, God is wonder, God is all. And it's just like, when it reaches that stage, we've just defined God in such, a watery, wishy-washy way that honestly we may as well deal away with theist and atheist at that point. Yeah. So I just see ya.
I mean, if God is just a thought, then what's the point of worshipping it, right?
Yeah, that's a good saying, actually. You should keep hold of that one.
Because I see people say, quantify God in these weird things like, oh, God is what you think God is. What's the point of all these ritualistic procedures, and what's the point of all of these holy books with their laws in them if God is literally what I think God is?
Right, okay, next question. How do people react when they see you on the street and recognize you from this YouTube channel?
Never happens.
That's never happened to me.
It happened to you at the university.
No, it wasn't someone recognized on the street though. Okay, the only time I've been recognized by someone was at a freshers fair at university. And a couple of people recognized me, They didn't recognize me at the AHS stand. They recognized me at the feminist stand. They recognized me for my feminist content. So, you know, it was just like, oh, I recognize you. Literally it. They weren't a big fan or anything. That was just, oh, cool. I've seen your videos on YouTube. The most I've been recognized, actually, oh, sorry, let me just knock you. The most I've been recognized in like a dramatic way is by the Christian Union at my university. And that wasn't so much they came across my channel naturally, that was because I think they were passing my channel around at the time. There were several public events that, you know, ended in an explosion by me, particularly at one which was, oddly enough, titled Guerrilla Christian. Where did I get the idea from? And the person was discussing with me, and there was free will and the problem of evil, and I brought up the facts that, you know, God could preserve the free will of the would-be raped individual if they stepped in. And what they asked in response is, well, where's the harm in the rape? You know, and that right there, that just hit a nerve. And this wasn't some random stranger. This was someone that the Christian Union had decided should be one of the individuals to represent them. You know, that level of dishonesty. And of course, I'm a survivor myself, you know, so I raised my voice instantly. This was during a break between the Guerrilla Christian Q&A. They'd come over to the table. My voice went up. Everyone heard what I had to say. And after that, I became infamous. Pretty much any time I saw someone pointing at me at university, I could gather probably a member of the Christian Union.
They came after me, yes.
They would also come after you, Dita, after I became this like scary individual.
And they came after me and they were like, oh, what do you know about Christianity? I said, I know some things about Catholicism. Ew, Catholicism, no, ew, ew.
At our university, Catholics have their own different group as the Catholic group.
I never quite knew the vitriol non-Catholics have against Catholics.
Yeah, it's a weird one. Very often, like, Protestants will claim that, do apologize, Protestants will claim that, you know, Catholics aren't real Christians. Yeah. It's just another thing. I'm dealing with video in which someone's claiming that Hitler and the Nazis couldn't be Christians since they killed other Christians. It's like the Reformation, you know, specifically the English Reformation, the Church of England, you know, Henry VIII went on a blood spree. Yeah. So did his daughters, both, but on opposite sides. You know, executing people left and right. It doesn't stop a person being Christian. It just means they form their own damn church. It's something that they don't realize. But
he even killed a reformist himself, Thomas More.
Yeah. Anyway, do you think religious rules like anti-abortion and punishment for leaving are more a way of keeping their numbers up than an actual religious belief? Yes,
I do. I actually do.
I don't know. It's a mixture. There's a mixture of motives there. It's not just keeping their numbers up. It's also controlling women. That's a big part of it as well. And there'll be those who have the sincere belief that, yes, it is wrong. So, you know, I think there's so many different people, and one person can have multiple reasons. You know, you talk to someone, they don't give one reason for their justifications. They will give multiple reasons. But yeah, that's for the Catholic Church. That's very often been the discussion. You know, oh, it's our duty to repopulate the earth, sort of thing. So for them, definitely, that seems to be that sort of doctrine pressure there. Yeah.
This was the anti-contraception. I mean, it's not just about controlling the women's body. It's about controlling people's personal lives, people's sexuality, and especially now, more than ever, now that people are leaving religion. And it's not just the Catholic Church, though. I've also found this amongst other groups. I mean, in India, we have the present fundamentalist Hindu groups who come over and tell women to produce 5 children each, so Muslims don't outnumber us, which is not really going to happen anyway. But yeah, we've been told things like that. Then I remember this is also one of the strains of Wahhabism, I think, in Islam, where, you know, it's abortion, not so much, they're not so much anti-abortion, but they are anti-contraception. Like they do walk along that pro-life strain, that okay, this is how we keep our numbers up, and they take pride in the fact that their religion's growing, but it's not because of so many people entering the religion as so much as so many people being born into families who follow these religions, and they know that they follow that pattern to the T. And yeah, I do think there's some truth in that statement. Yes, it's an attempt to keep that numbers up. Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to the next question. Is that the one? Yes. Do you think it's hard to be an atheist when you love your culture, but your culture has religious undertones?
Yes.
Having Mexican Aztec blood, I love my culture, but others think I hate due to non-belief. This, I think you should.
Yeah, it's the same in India, because in India, although Hinduism exists outside of India, not just because of not just because of Indian migration, but it also exists in countries like Nepal, some bits of Thailand, and Bali as well in Indonesia. And I've seen, it's outside of Abrahamic cultures, Abrahamic religions, I've seen how non-Abrahamic religions kind of tend to overlap with the culture and the traditions of this place. And personally, I'm very good at sorting the two out. So I've been called out for maybe celebrating festivals while being an atheist. But the thing is, when I celebrate a festival, for me, it's about people coming together. It's about food. It's about, me making food. It's about having an occasion to party. I don't really go along with the religious part of it. And I know I'm cherry picking, but I'm very honest about the fact that I'm cherry picking. I need an occasion. It's like it's just like another birthday party for me. Do I love my culture? Depends. I like bits and parts of my culture, but I'm not huge on, I'm not, there's a word for people like that, this sanskari, people who hang on to traditions and cultures for the sake of it. I'm not that kind of person. I think culture should evolve. I think especially when it comes to culture and human rights, which is also, follows the same path as religion versus human rights. I think human rights always comes first. And I would always think that culture needs to evolve, even if with more and more atheists coming out, I think the culture of a place needs to embrace the non-religious into it.
With this, I think I go back to what my dad asked me when I found out that I was an outspoken atheist on YouTube. He asked me, would I be scared to go into a church? And I was like, why? Why would that even register?
Yeah.
It's like, a church is just a building. It's a very big building very often. It's got a nice hall. It's very good to have, talks in, etc. It's very good. I used to go to a 40k tabletop gaming group that was in a church. It's a general space. It's good to use. As for cultural practices, most atheists celebrate some form of winter solstice. They may do certain meetings during, Easter, etc. So if they can do it with Christianity, why should you feel like, why should I get what you mean. People shouldn't assume that you shouldn't be able to take parts of, cultural heritage. You should be able to. Yeah. It's something important to us. We like calendars, we like dates, we like stories, we like tales that bind us together, and I'm all for it. The Bible says, thou shalt not steal. I say, when it comes to culture and when it comes to your own history and when it comes to doing this, take what you need to make you happy.
Yeah.
If you want to celebrate something, even if there is no God and it's got some theistic meaning, you want to do it anyway, and it's silly, do it anyway. Why can't you be silly sometimes? Humans don't always have to be these hyper-rational beings every moment of every second of every day. That you can do silly things if it makes you feel great. and that's absolutely fine. We should embrace some aspects of our silliness because it has benefits in letting us, relieve ourselves of some stress, some anxieties, just doing the most ridiculous things. I had a teacher, and this is completely not related to religion, but it's related to just doing some random thing. I went on a geography trip by the coast, as you do in the UK. We were there, we're having a barbecue. Someone didn't like peppers, and they had lots of peppers on their, kebab. So the teacher said to them, eat all the peppers and I will go into the sea. And even though they ate it, we're like, the teacher's not going to do it. In a full suit, I shit you not, the teacher walked out into the wake, at which point the actual leader of the geography department had to call him back because he was getting beyond up to your knees, which is health and safety. You shouldn't go beyond your knees if you're in any sort of running water. He wasn't in swimming gear, for example. He was the head of the law department, and he just walked out to the sea in a suit. He got enjoyment out of it. He laughed about it the entire way back. Mm-hmm. The students loved it. Sometimes we need to let go and just do something silly if it makes us happy. I think that's something very important to keep in mind. So, yeah. Okay. This is an atheist snail's journey. Can you recommend any good books or YouTubers or podcasts who talk about Hinduism or Buddhism from an atheist point of view?
Buddhism, I know.
Oh, okay.
There is somebody called Mark W. Gura. He, I think, is the president of Atheist Alliance of America, and he holds podcasts. And he's huge on atheist meditation, because meditation very often has been it's been enshrined in religious perspectives, but he has somehow managed to do it from an atheist perspective, more specifically from a secular Buddhist perspective. And I think you should follow. He has a YouTube channel. I think it's Mark W. Gura, so Gura. And he also does podcasts from time to time. You need to go to his website and find it. Is there somebody you'd recommend?
There's none that I can think of, sadly. Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm just sorting out questions just so we can sort of keep up to date with them. Just keep talking, just entertain.
Yeah, no, that's one person. I'm trying to think if there's somebody else. Hinduism, who else?
Yeah, I'm sorry, there aren't many. Maybe if you ask nicely, Udita will be quite happy to.
I could look up. I mean, as far as books are concerned, there's plenty, but I know some that are in my language.
Who was the speaker? He's deceased now. He was a revolutionary speaker from India.
Swami Vivekananda?
That might be him.
The one who went to Chicago.
I don't know. The one who said that, people often accuse me for being, being an atheist out of vanity, when no. And this is like years and years ago. This was during the colonial occupation.
Yeah, it might be that person. I don't know about this quote, but yes, he did go to Chicago, and he's done some phenomenal work. You might actually get his works in English. He's the founder of Ram Krishna Mission, which my family follows, and they are there's a whole history in that. But yeah, he was one of those reformist Hindus, and for his times, I find his views quite progressive. I mean, there are strains of misogyny there, but it's still, if you can't find his work, you should be able to find his work in English. It's Swami Vivekananda, and if you do, then I think you should go through with it. Yeah. And there's stuff that comes from ISKCON as well, Hare Krishna, but I personally am not a big fan of Hare Krishna. If you haven't noticed, I hate them. Okay. I used to hate them even when I was a Hindu.
Calm down. Do you think it takes longer to recover emotionally as opposed to intellectually from religious indoctrination? Not sure I asked that very well. Well, as the person asking before, how do you deal with fears that you have even fears of hell, for example, even once you have left. So there are quite clearly those who do take longer in that respect. As for leaving religion emotionally first and then dealing with the intellectual side, I mean, that sounds almost like this cliche, you left the church because you were angry at God sort of narrative. That sounds very similar to that. But again, there probably are cases where people left for emotional reasons and then maybe later checked intellectually and then found out actually they'd made the right call. It's a very personal thing. It depends on that specific case. So it really, I can't give clarity on that because again, it depends case to case. Sorry.
I do think. I mean, as somebody who's suffered from depression and as somebody who knows a lot of atheists who used to follow a religion, who used to follow religion, and who do have history of depression and various other things like autism. I do find that it's very often it's not so much that they don't know, what's out there or what's not out there. It's like, for me personally, it's been difficult. I think it's taken me such a long time to actually come out as an atheist. It's just that it's really difficult to know that there's nothing out there to vindicate me. There's nothing out there to put things right. I do think it takes a long time to recover emotionally from, when you're coming out of this deeply ingrained belief system. But then whenever I face those fears, I also think that once you see the truth, you can't really unsee it. I mean, it is hard, yes. I will not deny that. And I'm still in the process of figuring out what to do and how to deal with it. But it's been good so far.
Well, what made you realize that religion is bullshit? Oh, God, it comes back to
For me, it was misogyny. No, for me, it was misogyny because first came misogyny, then came the caste privilege. Because, I have to say, I have never been on the bad side of caste privilege. My family are Brahmins who are on the highest rank of the caste system. And it's been ingrained in me somehow that I'm supposed to be better than the rest just because I was born into a Brahmin family. Now, keep in mind that Bengalis in general, that's the community I'm from. In general, they are comparatively less casteist or less hung up on religion than a lot of Indians are. But even then, somehow it was like, if God says these things, if God brings me to this earth and he gives me, he makes me a woman and somehow that's a disadvantage. He then gives me a caste that I did nothing to deserve. And then, there are other things like because I'm pale-skinned, it was seen as a gift, as a blessing from God because, pale skin is a thing in most of Asia. I just didn't find any logic. And then I think for me, the final straw was that got me out of the Hindu thing. But I think for me, the final straw was when I went to attend one of these Catholic masses in our school. And we were told to forgive our molesters, our rapists, and people who've sinned against us, and and told to keep our bodies holy. And that's when I realized that no religion really, that was like kind of epiphany, that no religion actually does the right thing. They don't advocate human rights the way it should be advocated. And that's when the seed was sowed in me that maybe the entire thing about religion is horseshit. What was for you?
For me, it was growing up. It was the age when I started realizing death, and do know that this fear of death and noticing death was occurring, along with the narrative that God controlled everything, including when you die. That was not what made me deconvert, but it did cause quite a bit of depression at the time, anxiety, depression. I remember we used to keep these religious diaries in RE class. There were these yellow books that used to keep and the teachers would read through them, which looking back is kind of like, isn't that supposed to be very personal stuff? But then they actually called me to the side because they were worried that I was having suicidal thoughts from the stuff I was writing, as I noticed that, you know, God was causing all this death. Naturally, over time, I just fell in with the right sort of crowd. I had a brilliant science teacher who was very good at teaching us the burden of proof in such a way that I didn't realize he was doing it. Rather than using Russell's teapot, he actually taught us at GCSE level burden of proof by using the invisible polar bear. And the reason for this is we were also doing evolution and adaptation, so we were doing polar bears. So he was hoping that our arguments would try and include, you know, sort of statements about what a polar bear can do. And of course, every time the entire class tried to trip him up, he just created an ad hoc response after ad hoc response after ad hoc response. You know, it doesn't leave footprints, it doesn't have heat, you know, all of this sort of stuff, and you just couldn't pin him down. This, along with starting to find my place in life, just over time, I just realized that, you know, why did I believe in such a cruel and loving God? Well, why did I believe in a God? You know, and I realized I never had a good empirical reason to do so. It had always just been, my school told me God existed, you're going to believe it, I accepted it. That was literally it. And yeah, and it just sort of fell away after that. So, you know, reading the Bible was definitely a good help as well, because I did read the Bible as a child. I remember around the time that I just realized, I just clicked. You know, I actually ended up burning that Bible. That was a very liberating experience. Yes, it wasn't staged or anything like that. I was literally one of my lowest moments. I looked at, it was the Gideon's Bible. They're like the little, not the big ones you get in your bedroom. You get the little ones they give to students as well. You know, read that, checked the background for what it had on suicide, because I was low at the time. It was complete and utter fucking crap. And what was sadness and depression very quickly turned to rage, very quickly. And I remember I had a Zippo at the time I'd got from Thailand. I took that Zippo and yeah, I torched the fucker. It was about then that I started questioning, why did I believe in such a deity, such a useless deity? All the answers are supposed to be that that's what the Gideon's Bible states, you know, for like the, it's got like a quick reference for students in the back. It states it's supposed to have all the answers. It didn't have any fucking answers. Why did I believe in such a useless God? And then, why such a hateful God? Why any God? So yeah, that was my story, and I realized I've been going for quite a while then. Next question. Is it bad to be an atheist because you're too lazy to do religious practices? But I just want to do that one first, okay?
Is it bad to be an if you're too lazy to do a religious practice, but I mean, do you still believe in God? Then you're not an atheist. But if you don't, and I mean, if you don't, that's I think the end of. I mean, that's all. I mean, whether you do religious practices or not, after that, it's.
What it could have been is you could have realized that a God who gave you this life as this great gift, why would they make you waste it worshipping them?
Yeah.
Surely they don't need to worship it. If it's like that, then, you know, if it's sort of that basic logic, then I can completely understand how they live there. I don't get how, like, the practice can't be bothered to do the rituals led to you being an atheist. Why wouldn't you just, like, adopt a more, you know, a wifty-wafty sort of sense? Like pretty much the entire Church of England. You know, we don't go to church at all, but we're still Christian.
Yeah.
We don't pray at all, but we're still Christian.
You can be non-religious, but still be a theist.
It's just like, you know, the theism has taken this wifty-wafty approach. If that sort of got you to think, actually, there is no God, then most likely you never had the belief to begin with. It was just the practice was sort of reinforcing that there must be some sort of meaning for this, otherwise we wouldn't be doing it. It's sort of like an argument from tradition, you know.
Somebody had a question just before that.
There was a question before that.
What do you think?
What do you think of the work of Dark Matter 2525? Nidita doesn't know dark matter very well. I know them. I've talked to them very, very abruptly. Not the best terms either. There was a bit of a falling out, a bit of a rift at the time. This is ages ago. This is years ago. Don't take anything from it. It's a silly thing they did, but yeah. When I first came to the community, absolutely loved their animations. Nowadays, however, I adore their longer videos of just them talking. You know, their response to, for example, the claims that what the Middle East needs is more religion, it needs Christianity. And the way that he was just dissecting this narrative, because the reason the Middle East is the way it is today is because A, the US destabilized governments that had control there, and then they instilled religious propaganda. Why? Well, because it was designed to halt the communist domino effect. So yeah, I really enjoy Dark Matter's later videos. I can understand animations work for a lot of people, but I used to enjoy that a lot more. These days, I don't really enjoy those animations so much. So yeah. Anyway, moving on. What is the state of marijuana legality in the UK?
I don't know this.
Marijuana? I don't know.
Our neighbours used to smoke it.
It's not really enforced, to my knowledge. You know, stop searches, particularly if you're an ethnic minority, you're likely to get creamed. But otherwise, it doesn't seem to be that enforced. I mean, I can't stand the smell of the stuff. And the second year of university, because first year I was in student accommodation, second year moved out with a bunch of friends, as you do. We were the only students, probably in history, who complained about the fact that the people next door were smoking way too much weed.
It was making me nauseous.
It was making her nauseous. It drove me to the effect of attempting to boil lemons just to try and stop the smell. Like, it was that bad. It was boiling summer, and I couldn't open the conservatory because the house we were staying in was a converted council house. It didn't have windows in my bedroom. It only had the conservatory door. So I couldn't open that because that led to the garden where they'd smoke it. So we were boiling alive with our boiling lemons. And that was a bit ranty. As for the question itself, again, it doesn't really interest me. I see a lot of bigger issues to deal with than weed. You know, I don't want to be this sort of ranting YouTube atheist who ignores racism, sexism, LGBT plus stuff, then to flip the lid when someone's threatening the weed.
Well, I have to say,
who gets the reference?
Yeah, I have to say though, in this, I don't know about UK, but because I recently started following K-pop a bit, and I know in Korea they're actually like really strict about it. They literally drove somebody, one of these idols, to suicide just because he smoked a bit of weed. And I do think sometimes people just go to extremes with weed. It's probably one of the most harmless drugs ever.
I mean, I was never prohibited from it by my parents. My father actually told me if I was going to do any substance, rather than doing typical cigarettes due to the nicotine and the addiction, he strictly told me as I was going to college, if you given the option, do weed. It's easier to give up weed than it is nicotine. So but it just never really came to me. I don't drink either. I'm a non-drinker. So yeah, sugar, food, you know, all that sort of stuff. That's my addiction. I absolutely adore food.
He's not British.
Not very British. That's
not very British. Not
Jacob Bander.
Bandercom,
sorry. Yes. Why are you up so early?
It's not early.
For us, it's not early. We started the show at 6:30. It's now 7:45. So, you know, in the evening, by the way. It's not early for us. It's early for you, not for us. We're in India.
Don't keep Bella in.
Yeah. Did you already tell us why you moved to India? No, we haven't actually stated that. This one.
Yeah, well, I'm Indian, so yeah.
We met at university.
I came back
20-year-old whippersnapper, 26-year-old cougar, ow. We met at university. She was doing...
Not a cougar.
Udita was doing her master's in international
relations. Oh my god!
I was in my second year of my bachelor's in science in sociology, culture, and media. And yes, it is a bachelor's of science because I did my quantitative methods.
So was mine. It was master's in science.
Yeah, I know, but I was just saying, this is like someone's going to dispute because it's sociology, it's not real science. It's like the statistical methods for all of our studies are the same.
Yeah.
So, you know, I was second year, we met, we got together. Udita then finished her degree as I was partially into my placement year because I was doing a sandwich course. Then Udita sadly had to go back to India because couldn't get a different sort of visa to extend her stay. And we were apart for 1 year, 3 months, I think it was 10 days. It might have been 11, I can't fucking remember. Yeah, I remember those sort of details. You were apart for over a year, and that was hell.
For both of us, actually.
Yeah, that was definitely.
But I do try to look at the positives of it. I mean, I did stuff. I don't like. Okay, I'm gonna sound cheesy, but yeah, like stuff like, you know, writing love letters and sending them over the post. You know, old school stuff that you don't get to hear about. I also reconnected with a lot of my school friends, and well, I'm very glad to say who've been watching our channel, who know that we're from the LGBT community and who wanted to know stuff, and all of that happened, yes, but it's just, I really don't want to go through that ever again, and I'm sure you don't.
No, I'd rather not. It was hell, I can't really stress that enough. The psychological state I was in during my dissertation period, when, you know, first of all, dissertation is hard, but then also lacking Udita there. Udita was going through a very rough time, and I couldn't do anything about it.
My family and all.
You know, seeing someone you love go through psychological torture on a daily basis, and you can't do anything, is one of the worst feelings you can have. And it got so bad that I actually applied to drop out of university at one point. And I started getting the forms together. I started going through the process. I had a meeting with my personal tutor. And thankfully, my personal tutor was amazing. He had actually dropped out of his own course when he was a student for similar reasons. And then he came back later and he redid it and then went on to do his master's and PhD. You know, he was brilliant. He pushed for me to get plenty of psychological help from the university psychiatrists that they had. So, you know, they kept me on board, but it was not pleasant for either of us to be in that sort of situation. So when it came to, I finished my degree, no attachments, that was it. I had to be with Udita, and the only way that we could really guarantee that at the time was to come to India. So that's why we're here.
We're still trying to move out. I mean, I'm trying to, because this one's family would prefer us to stay close to them. So I'm trying to move to the EU, which would be, you know, the approximate distance for both of us. But with the entire immigration thing going on there, I'm not very sure if I can make it anywhere close about. I'm trying to learn Spanish and Dutch. Well, let's hope something will turn up.
Right. Is it hard to get internet connection in India?
No.
You take this one. You take this
No,
one?
it's not. It's hard if you want to get a dongle, because, you know, the USB things, because not every company gives you a cost-effective plan. If you can find one, that's good. But sometimes they will give you a plan that's okay for you to work on, but for stuff like this, where you need unlimited internet, sometimes it's difficult. However, in recent years, it's become really easy for you to get a broadband connection, which is like a wired connection. That's what we have. So wired connection, it's fast, it's cost-effective, it gives you an unlimited data package, and it suits our work. But it won't suit if you are looking to move somewhere. So yeah, but it's not difficult at all. I mean, especially if you're living in a city, no.
And we're living in Delhi. So.
We're living in Delhi.
We're living in Delhi. This is the central hub. Yeah. This is from Rational Humanist. Do you think it's possible to be progressive and believe in God?
Yeah.
Yeah.
very much.
Pretty straightforward answer.
Yes, I know too many people do.
It depends, of course. You know, if you believe in a God that has a very set doctrine and you refuse to even consider that that doctrine could be incorrect in some way, then that of course is antithetical to progressive, which is reevaluating your position and changing it. If, however, you believe in a deity that's perfectly okay with you to assess, you know, your worldview, then, you know, that can still be progressive. We see it all the time.
Yes.
So, but then you get like most cases of people is actually like a weird pick and mix. They cherry pick pretty much. They pick what they want to match their desired thoughts. Okay, next question. Do you have anything to say about Jordan Peterson?
No.
I see Jordan Peterson mentioned quite a bit. I've got a few of their videos documented to watch. I haven't got around to it. With all like their name really seemed to explode within the last couple of months. So while we were away in the UK, that's when I first started coming across like their name was being mentioned repeatedly. That's like the first time I really started hearing about them. Then, of course, we had, first of all, there's the libel case, there's the DMCA case, there was the privacy complaint, there was all this sort of stuff, and it just kept building up and up and up. So I haven't had time to look at new people. I've just been trying to keep the channel up and running, as well as starting the new channel, which you should all go and look at if you haven't looked at before.
Yeah.
The new channel is Essence of Media. At the moment, it's mostly my stuff doing creature feature
Well,
videos.
I'm coming on with you know, stuff from fiction. So I'm starting with Game of Thrones, some stuff from Game of Thrones, because I am the most comfortable with Game of Thrones and Buffy. Those two series I love and I follow. But I will move on to other stuff soon enough.
With me, it's mostly creature features. I've been doing a series called Monsters Declassified, which is a lore series surrounding various monster, well, you know, different movies, etc. But it takes an in-world perspective, so it's like written by a you know, a parazoological bureau, like a zoological society, but for monsters sort of thing. So it's written from an inverse perspective. So it's just about the monster. It's not about the production of the movie or anything like that. I use footage and stills from the different movies. Got 2 episodes of that out. I've also got how I'd redesign the story of Ghidorah for the upcoming 2019 Godzilla King of the Monsters film. And there's also a little surprise that was released today, which some of you have already seen, liked, etc. So I won't spoil that one. That's Essence of Media for just anyone. It's same as Essence of Thought, just media at the end. It's keeping it all branded.
Have you seen the documentary Contradiction by Jeremiah Kamara?
I haven't.
I haven't.
I haven't. Sorry.
If you lie for God, is that a sin?
Well, I've seen different takes on that, actually. Depends on the religion. I've seen plenty of different takes on that.
If you lie for God, I mean, I'm pretty sure there are greater sins to be lived with.
Okay, I don't know if the thing has frozen. Lying for God, I just think the whole idea of lying as a sin is pretty disastrous in of itself, you know. There are plenty of good reasons. Sorry about that, we just had a cutout on our end. It was just the screen that we've got here. I can see it still going. But anyway, lying as a sin is completely vile. I mean, there are plenty of situations where lying is completely justifiable, unquestionably justifiable, and I will stand by that. One of the people that used to actually end up harassing Edita at my university when they found out that she was dating me, the first time I actually met them was during Freshers Week, and they were doing these runs for, it was Text a Toasty. You text a question about God, you pick the fillings for a toasty, they deliver it to you, sort of thing. And they answer your question, of course. So he came and he started like talking like sin is always a sin, and I asked him, is lying a sin? And he said, yes, of course, lying is a sin. It says so in the Bible. At which point I asked them, you know, what about those in occupied Netherlands, So I've got family history there. What about people in occupied Netherlands who are part of the Dutch resistance? Is that, you know, a problem to lie about? Should they be able to lie about it? And, oh, it's 180 degrees turnaround. But yeah, so I don't know how their theology deals with it, but in general, it's just a vile narrative to me. I use that word a lot these days, vile narrative.
White lies, like lies that don't harm anyone. So
anyway, I'm just losing track of where we are in the conversation. So anyways, go to Q&A.
Okay. Have a wee question. How long to cool off, if at all, before you begin your response videos? Or are you just naturally calm, even in the face of dumb theistic arguments like Callum, for example? I'm not calm at all. So
I think that's like, with ignorance, willful ignorance, I'm not too aggressive. Reassertions of willful ignorance grind on me a little bit. But it's more of the human rights abuses that really infuriate me. And I don't always calm down before recording. Normally I do, because I have to record at certain times, otherwise there's too much noise going on in the background. But then I can pick up exactly where I left off emotionally, because just by reading the script, that link of what was said, what I'm responding to, just comes back, and yeah, the anger comes out again. So it varies video to video.
I'm not calm, Matt. I'm not calm.
Yeah.
I'm not calm.
It varies
I'm actually
video
not.
to video. And I seem calm, but I scream internally. That's the thing.
You're not calm either.
How do you handle talking anti-theism with elderly family members? When my father was sick and later died, I'd been there talking to him about the issue. He was scared for his pending departure.
That's probably not the best time you should talk about.
It's just again about being appropriate. You know, pick your times, your battles, sort of thing. They weren't exactly going to go out like street preaching or anything at that point. So
I'm actually like, because I've come across atheists who will just jump down people's throats with you know, anything about religion, like even if it's not called for. I'm actually against that kind of thing, and this is precisely the reason, because as a person who suffered from depression and who's had a really hard time, like it's taken me more than a decade to come out of religion since I started questioning it. I understand why some people might follow that, you know, follow a religion, why it might be too huge a bridge to cross. And I'm like, I tell people not to, you know, not to jump down others' throats, because you don't know the other person's narrative. Maybe it's something that maybe they know that there's nothing out there, but it's just something they derive peace from. You, I mean, as long as they're not projecting it on me, as long as they're not projecting on other people, I think just leave them alone. Which is not something most apologists do. They do project.
Yeah, with me, again, just pick a more appropriate time at that point. I would not, you know, go out to rock the boat, as to say. If they then wanted to like invade that aspect of my life, like if I had a child, for example, and they wanted to force me to have a christening for them or whatever, then yeah, that's understandable to take an issue with it. Yeah. But generally, no. Unless they're doing something that can actively harm, or propagating notions that can actively harm people. Again, it's about appropriateness. That's why I like putting out the content on YouTube, because I'm not ambushing people. First of all, I'm just putting videos out there. And secondly, with most of the videos I do, they're responses of people who have forwarded their own positions. So quite clearly, they want to at least engage on some level. They may not want my sort of engagement, but, you know, there's some sort of, yes, agreement that we're going to do this here. Even if they then turn around and decide to file for a privacy complaint. Okay. Do you think Western positivism law is the antidote for theocratic bullying and encroachment?
Could be. I mean, if the law is not derived from religion.
It's got to be secular law. That's
yes.
Pretty much it. Secular law that one principle stops the encroachment. You know, you don't need everything else. You know, the other laws will have to be discussed from an ethical perspective, but no matter what, separation of church and state is vital to any society that exists, because you can't have freedom of religion without freedom from religion. You know, freedom of religion demands that you have that freedom from it to begin with to make your own choice. If parents can just brand their child, then we have a problem. And yes, I do class branding of children as a religion, actual state problem. You know, household is part of the state. I reject this notion that it isn't. This notion was used for the longest time to to argue against getting involved with domestic abuse cases, because there's the law's domain and then there's the demands of the household domain.
Personal domain.
But I completely reject that notion. Branding your child as religion is ridiculous. That's why, you know, rituals I don't particularly matter, but especially when it comes to like physical alteration, then I take a big issue with it.
I think if it's against fundamental rights, if the laws somehow, I mean, it depends on whether it's protecting fundamental rights or if it's against fundamental rights. And my position would depend on that.
1 second. We will be with you in a second. Is Judita LGBT plus as well?
Yes.
Also, yes. Does Judita have a channel? Yes, she has 2 channels. Okay. They are called Essence of Thought and Essence of Media. I am not Essence of Thought. I'm Peter/Apple Thurston.
Oh, I work in the background. So
you don't work in the background.
I prefer working in the background because I'm not somebody who's, like I pointed out, I'm not calm. So it would take me a long time to cool off. The few times I've done videos, it really pisses me off.
Okay. Second, I'm just grabbing more questions from you. I'm also just keeping track.
Yes, I'm LGBTQ. It's taken me just a really long time to come out of that as well, like come out of the closet with that as well, because of you know, how bisexual women are portrayed and everything.
2 flags for me, 1 for her. Okay, next question. I was actually confused for a moment when you were mentioning Jordan Peterson and saying there. Do you think it's better to default to there instead of a likely pronoun, or in this case, a known? I just default to there. I've always defaulted to there. That's there and they has always been what I've gone to. It's literally how I've been. Like, it is when I look at my old writings, even before I came out about things, started getting involved in things. There, I remember there was another YouTuber who I used to be a good friend with called Mark Allen Bialik, and they were a poet. They were also an author, and I was writing something at the time, and I got them to read it. And at the beginning of the story, there was this masked figure, and I used they, there, they, there. Mark could not stand it. He was always correcting it to he, even though it wasn't a he. The audience didn't know, but I knew it wasn't a he. And I didn't want, you know, to say it was he only to be that it wasn't he. I just wanted there and they, because it's what we've used in England for the past, you know, couple of centuries. They and there, we've always used it. Yeah, there's big controversy. It seems bigger in America, but some reason it's drifted into the UK. I don't see why. I was always raised using they and their. You know, when talking about someone in the car who's passed me, I don't know the gender of the driver. I say they. We've always said it. Always they and their.
Yeah, I am glad that's catching up in India. I do have a lot of cishet friends who use they and their over here. And they've started to.
I mean, especially the most common place I've always used it is when denoting possession. Theirs. I've always used. I've never used his or hers, really. It's always been theirs.
It just sounds less personal.
Yeah, I don't know. I just always have, because people can always get who I'm talking about with the context. So I'm just reading these other comments. Will you ever go to Speaker's Corner, London? Probably not. Though I might be pissing off the wrong person in a bit. I've got a certain ginger apologist in my sights. We've already dealt with the luscious locks, okay? But I've got certain apologists in my sites for a certain video they've done recently, which I just find absolutely vile. Sadly, however, they've got a known history of abusing the system. But we will see how it goes. As for going to Speaker's Corner, I get why people do it. It's easy to do on your lunch break. You can go there for a couple hours. You can talk whatever you want. But for me, live discussions, like live debates, holds little value. I always see reference materials as the highest priority, you know. When it comes to, I've got a video going out on Wednesday about this. It's already uploaded. It's up there. You'll be getting my video titled "Why Debate is Useless," which of course is on about live formal debate. That goes out on Wednesday. So, you know, when it comes to like Speaker's Corner, I actually see it as better than live formal debate because it hasn't been glorified to the same degree as live formal debate. Live formal debate has pretty much one use, and that is an education to show people a range of basic arguments. It doesn't give quality, it doesn't give clarity. It gives people the basic arguments, which as students, we're taught, go do the reading. This is like an introduction. That's brilliant. But when it comes to how it's being put forward as sort of this end-all be-all to discussion, no, I can't really stand formal debate in that respect. As for just live informal discussion, I think they're good for picking up the ideas everyone has. I've got a system. I think it's good for picking up the ideas people have, but again, for me, this is just not my thing. Okay, yeah. Come on, we need more questions. We are pretty much out of questions.
No, there are three.
There's how dare you cut this ludicrous locks, and then it's do Indian languages have gender-neutral pronouns? That's it. So.
No, we also have. What do you think of secular religions?
Where? Oh, okay. We'll come back to that in a bit. Yeah, but first we'll do the gender-neutral pronouns.
So I only speak 2 languages fluently. I'm trilingual. I only speak 2 languages fluently, and both of them are from North India. Well, Bengali is more east, but it's still derived from Sanskrit. So I can only speak from this family of languages. Yes, we do have gender-neutral pronouns. So we have, in Hindi, we have "main" for I. We have "tum" for you. We have "wo" for they, or he, or she. It does change with, so there are some similarities with Spanish. It does change with the singular plural things. So that might happen. It also will change, like in the Spanish you have, or even in Dutch you have, more than one kind of you, depending on how formal you are with the person. So in Hindi and Bengali, we have 3 yous. So one's formal, one's semi-formal, one's informal. However, and Bengali is the same. So there's ami, tumi, she, or tini, something like that. That's for, those are all gender neutral. However, in Hindi specifically, and it's not there in Bengali, the verbs can often change. The verbs and the adjectives can often change with gender, just like in Spanish. And so the most verbs and adjectives, they have a masculine form, a feminine form, and a neutral form. The neutral form traditionally was used for plural versions of both masculine and feminine, but these days I think I heard in a lot of LGBTQ circles the plural version being used as a gender non-confirming way of speaking the language. Pretty much how "they" is used in the singular tense in English. Okay.
Okay. What do I think of secular religions?
What are secular religions?
Secular religions will be, well, it depends on how you define religion. I define religion as any ideological system centered around the supernatural. So it would include such things as certain forms of Buddhism, certain forms of Scientology, Scientology. It involves ghosts, so yes, includes supernatural. Anything involving the supernatural as a belief system, so not just one belief on their own, but a belief system, but not involving a theistic deity. Or deity, I should say. Theistic deity is a bit redundant. Sorry, I've just messed up the Q&A thing here. So do you want to talk about how your thoughts on these non-theistic religions whilst I try sorting out this mess?
Well, the only one I really know closely is some versions of Wicca. And as far as I've seen them, they're okay. I mean, I've seen that they're not even creationists. So yeah, I'm fine with them. I don't have a problem. I don't have to answer that.
Okay, we've got more.
I mean, there are people. I have come across people here in India, even atheists who pounce on people with you can't be a secular Sikh or you can't be a secular Christian. But I do know religious people who have learned to get over themselves, who follow maybe a progressive, like they call themselves progressive Christians or progressive Hindus, and they're secular. And I think as long as you practice religion, I think that's the way you should be. I mean, whether you're a theist or atheist, as long as you know that the laws of the land don't have to follow your own personal belief system, it's fine by me.
Oh God, I'm still trying to sort things out, sorry. My parents are creationists and my best friend is a climate change denier. Is it bad that I don't care? It's not your job to teach anybody. That's one thing that people have to understand. You know, I try to help as many people as I can, but again, if like you're just someone that they know, it's not your job. I can't read into your mind. I'm not going to guilt you for it. Again, you've been put in a situation of no real choice of your own. If they're propagating it to a child, you know, then maybe there'd be a bit of an issue there. But otherwise, no. It's just, again, their ignorance is their ignorance. You could spend hours arguing over them and they likely wouldn't change their positions. So really, it's your time to choose whatever you want to do with it. You have one life, use it how you will.
I do want to respond to this person, all that, and then sue me. Yes, Indians and blacks have a problem. I will
go further into detail.
Yeah, it's racism is there in India, and we should probably talk that on a separate occasion, because if I go into that, it's going to...
No, keep going, please. I'm struggling at the moment.
Okay,
please.
Fine. Yeah, okay. So yeah, pretty much yes. I do sometimes fear what would happen if Peter was black and not white in India. I've seen discrimination because we live in a neighborhood where there are a lot of African immigrants, and it depends. Some people tend to, the more educated ones tend to, it's still racism. They tend to differentiate between blacks who were brought up in North America and Europe and blacks who come from Africa. And there are some who don't just care. They like use the N-word. And I feel like there's not a lot of sensitization against black issues. It's also because I think it's not just India though. I think it's most of Asia I've seen. It's the colorism that's there, and I wish I could say it's because of our colonial history. I'm really sorry about it. I wish I could say, but
what are you sorry for?
I do feel
we're the ones who came and fucked it up your country. It's not your fault.
No. But that's the thing I want to point out. I mean, colonialism probably just accelerated this whole colorist issue, but. You know, we always had racism in this country. Caste discrimination itself was based on, you know, the entire skin color things. Typically, upper caste people used to be, it's not so simple now because of the intermingling over millennia, but upper caste people used to be like people who used to be called Aryans, and they were the pale-skinned Indo-Europeans. If you're an Indo-European migration denier, honestly, skip this part. But yeah, and the lower castes used to be comprised of people who were native here. And that's pretty much how racism came to be in India. I think it's been here for a very long time. We might have been getting over it, when the colonial thing happened and kind of like put us back on track. But yeah, it's there, and I'm really sorry about it.
Okay, I've got things under control now. There was just a moment there that's overwhelmed. I've got to find out where we are. Quick line. I'm new to humanism. Can you recommend any good resources to learn more? Also, how and when did you discover you were a humanist? Cheers, Mark. Oh, God. I've not... YouTube is probably my #1 resource. And I know there are other resources out there. But YouTube and picking up bits here and there. And that's generally how I've gone. That's how I came up with what I class as like the 3 core principles that I've noticed over and over again. Evidence-based reasoning is the best way to come to a conclusion. All human life has innate value, and education will be the emancipator of humankind. Those are the 3 general sort of shared concepts I've seen throughout humanists. Beyond that, Bertrand Russell, great place to start, I'd actually say. In Praise of Idleness, I mentioned it earlier, but beyond that, mostly I've picked up on this through humanist talks. I used to attend a few humanist meets, Farnborough Humanist Society. I then, of course, ran an atheist humanist secular society at university. So there was lots of student conversations there. I don't know how helpful that's going to be for you. There are humanist conferences as well. I did go to one of those. They were pretty decent. There was a great segment there. It was by like the 4 different areas that the then BHA was campaigning upon. And the best one I had to say was campaigns about awareness around birth complications, and specifically stillborns, infant death, etc. Because even among religions, these things are they're very taboo. They are never discussed, and it leaves a lot of people with a feeling of being isolated and trapped. And go to talks. That would be my main bit of advice. If you can go to talks, if you can't, YouTube, find those talks on there. They are brilliant. For a structure of what humanism could be, Atheism 2.0. If you search for that, that's another great video. And that's a video noting that even after we agree that God doesn't exist, we still need calendars because we like calendars, we like dates, we like festivals, we like all these fun things. It's what helps human society work. So, let's have secular versions of these. And it's like, there are some good resources out there. And I hope this sets you off, again, in Praise of Idleness and a collection of other essays by Bertrand Russell, Atheism 2.0, and pretty much any talk on YouTube about the topic, or if you can, go to a live discussion, ask questions. Talkers always love people asking questions. Okay? Oh boy, there's a lot I've just gone through. Okay, find a question you can start answering. What are your opinions about theistic philosophers? You mean theologians? That's being unfair. There are theistic philosophers. Some do genuinely believe they have good reasons to be theistic. I question those. And of course, I question those. It's my job. To add?
I really don't, because like I said, I haven't followed any philosophy I haven't followed any work of philosophy to the full, but I have found something. I do know a lot of philosophers, who, especially like Hobbes and Kant, who kind of questioned how religion used to view the world in their times. I think it really depends. I mean, not all theistic philosophers are the same. Some of them who have attempted to reform, who have attempted to maybe question the existing rules or the existing schools of thought. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, with me,
I'm losing train of what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's fine. Again, with me, people like William Lane Craig, they drive me around the bend mostly. Again, I use theologian typically for them because that's what they are. They don't really adhere to much philosophy in my sense. So yeah, I count theology to be the failed attempts by theologians at philosophy. That's pretty much how I class it.
I think it's a way of how things are progressing. I mean, a lot of philosophers who started questioning religion, they were theistic, but they did start questioning, and they kind of paved the way until we arrived to...
People ask me, can a theist be humanist? I say, yes, they can believe they have genuine reasons, but, you know, if I bring to them philosophical arguments that should dispel that notion that they should believe on lack of evidence, you know, and they maintain that they should believe, then I'm going to, you know, challenge their sincerity as to whether they actually believe in things based on evidence and reasoning, because quite clearly there's a contradiction going on there. Okay, do you think that... Wait, what? Incest. Should incest be legal? And it's got the added extras of so long as protection is used, so you can't make a child who is likely to suffer from it. Incest, there's two ways to look at it. I look at it laterally and vertically. You know, with like parents and even aunts and uncles and grandparents, etc.
No.
There's a clear power differences there. There's in-taught power differences there. Consent out the window with that. It's the same sort of thing that a prison warden can't have sex with a prisoner because there's undue influence. Even though both are fully consenting adults, there was undue influence there. With, you know, that way, no, I can't agree with it on ethical reasons. Lateral incest, it doesn't bother me. It really doesn't. I don't care about it. You know, I don't care about it to any degree. You talk about condom usage, and I assume you're talking about birth defects. Birth defects increase like 0.03%. It only increases significantly if you compact it generation to generation to generation to generation. So, for example, I would see the practice of telling people that they should, you know, only marry within the family to preserve purity as an issue. That I would see as an issue.
Yeah.
But lateral incest, even if they have children, doesn't bother me. You know, drinking whilst pregnant is going to have a much bigger impact, and whilst we may frown upon it, we don't, you know, outlaw it on that basis. So that might shock some people, but honestly, it is such a non-issue, because even if they have a child with a birth defect, I'd rather have a child with a birth defect be taken care by a loving couple than a child just be abused. So, yeah. I know, I'm not saying that's a dichotomy, but I'm just noting that it's like, why are we trying to make, you know, a loving family having children illegal? I mean, by that logic, you could argue that, for example, women who have had a high history of breast cancer in their family, should they be allowed to have children? Because there's a possibility that they might pass it on. You know, you start entering very dangerous grounds there. This whole thing is going to change, of course, with the idea that we might soon be able to actually identify certain disorders and whether or not we should actually set out to tackle them. It's a big ethical minefield there.
I also think it depends on where you're growing up. I mean, in India, I would probably want to be a little more, you know, regulatory of incest, because the undue influence doesn't just extend to people who hold power over you, like your uncle or, I don't know, your uncle, aunt, parents, grandparents over here, because we often do have extended families. And even though we don't necessarily stay together, there is that element of influence coming in. So even between cousins, you know, and especially with the system of arranged marriage over here. So yeah, I think it would depend on what generally happens around your surroundings. I mean, I'm fine with two people genuinely in love indulging in incest, as long as there is no notion of undue influence, which is fine by me.
Yeah, again, you know, undue influence is something that's going to have to be argued, but
Yeah.
unlike theists, I think we on the humanist side can admit ethics are not going to be easy. That's why we have so many reviews. And then another thing for a humanist that's very important is re-review and re-review and re-review forever. You know, ethical questions will never stop being asked.
I mean, hypothetically, I would not see anything gravely wrong if, say, the two siblings were to hook up and then you find like one of the siblings was actually did not know that they were siblings for whatever reason. And I mean, in that case, the undue influence isn't really there. For cases like that, I don't
mind with siblings either, because again, there's no real power dynamics there.
It depends.
I know there's really no power dynamic.
It's a cultural thing. I think it depends on
it's
where you're brought up.
Again, it's more uncles, aunts, mothers, fathers, grandfathers, grandmothers sort of thing, you know.
Yeah, with them, definitely.
That's clear cut. But again, with other questions, it's all very messy.
Yeah.
Okay. Right, okay, this is about adult baby diaper lover. Oh, God.
Oh, I saw one of those videos.
God. Yeah, well, I've seen a lot of that art. And this comes into what a later person has asked. What are your thoughts on the furry fandom? Yeah, we talk about this in the same... They're not the same thing, but I've just seen there's a lot of what are known as baby furs. They get everywhere. I find them annoying, but again, it's their thing. I don't give a crap about them. Ultimately, so yeah. That's okay. What are your thoughts on the furry fandom? Talking about that. Oh, well, that's where I started video making to begin with, before I came to the secular community. It didn't end well. It didn't end well at all. A lot of people know about my time in the refuge, what happened there, you know, the domestic abuse, sexual assault back then. But there's also been other issues throughout my life. Notably, one was in the furry fandom. I was the target of grooming. However, thankfully for myself, I caught on to it and I blew the whistle. For a 15-year-old to have thousands and thousands of furries bearing down on them because they had evidence, visual images of a person trying to solicit sexual materials from them, that's what actually drove me to come to the secular community to begin with. Not all furries are like that, I realized, but you know, I just need to get that out of the way. Most furries I know absolutely fine. You know, even after this, I still stayed in touch with a couple. There was Caraway, that was his name. Caraway, we know each other. He's a rabbit. We game a bit. I lent him money to go to a UK FurCon. I've forgotten what it's called. I don't know if it's Confuzzled or something else. They got different names and different cons. You know, I lent him money. You know, it was several £100s. I lent him several £100s. He paid me back. Again, I don't have an issue with the furry fandom. The reactionary elements of the furry fandom, though, however, you know, when Gamergate happened, it wasn't a big surprise to me. I've seen the same reactionary vitriol, and that's why I just steered clear. I steered completely clear. What I remember, however, was when I was new to EssenceOfThought. Now, there was the person who I blew the whistle on. There was one of their supporters. It was quite a large furry, actually. Quite a large YouTube personality, because there used to be YouTube personalities among the furry YouTube community. They came along, and this is when I had probably about 200 subscribers. I was starting to build my channel up again. They came along and they subscribed to my channel. And that was generally harassing, because I was like, oh shit. If they realize that I'm the same person that they, you know, a year prior was totally tearing into, then I might have to get up and move again. But thankfully, I agree with that quite quickly. But yeah. Furry fandom in general, I like the art. I dusted a Legion Tale. I play it. I read Two Kinds. I read House Pets. They're web comics. They're brilliant.
What's that thing we were watching? Spice and Wolf.
Spice and Wolf. That's not so much furry, but that's broad. I know it's broader, but you know, I dealt with that shit before. I fully regret that I didn't actually get more involved with what happened with Dramagate. Looking back, I didn't say enough. I didn't stand up enough. You know, I should probably actually, I should do a public apology here. I owe someone a public apology, and that is Miss Sarkeesian, Anita Sarkeesian. I owe her an apology. Back then, I got wrapped up. I stayed out of things pretty much. You know, I played the neutral mid-ground. And the best way to play the neutral mid-ground is to stay in one position, but throw someone under the bus. Someone I threw under the bus was Anita. And if you look at some of my older videos, you'll see that I say I'm a feminist, but I dislike what Anita does. And I talk about how I find much of her work to be reductionist, shallow, etc. I wasn't thinking clearly about what she was attempting to achieve. Her work is brilliant for what she's attempting to achieve. She isn't creating her videos for the scientific community. She's not creating them for university students. She's creating this content to make it accessible, to make the critiques accessible, you know, and yes, with that go a lot of the dates, a lot of the nuance, etc. But when you look at her work and how it was like portrayed by Thunderfoot in particular, his dishonesty was immense in cutting out parts that she even notes in like the very next scene. And the fact that he will be willing to download footage that quite clearly he could have just got from the video itself, but he couldn't do that because then he would have realized that said person talked about said scene. You know, we've all got shames, and that's one of mine. I didn't do enough. I didn't speak out enough. And yeah. Anyhow, I imagine I haven't looked at the comments for like the last 5 minutes. Yeah, oh God. There's not actually that many comments. I was expecting far more comments to be there. There's only been about 4 there. Keep asking about Jordan Peterson. Again, I haven't looked much into Jordan Peterson, so if you're expecting a response to that, you're probably going to get the wrong place. How did I go? How did I get here? Right, so we start with the furry community. Again, I got no issue, but I was chased out of the furry YouTube community for whistleblowing a predator. Thankfully, nothing happened to me. The police then got involved, and I don't know because it's been, you know, coming on to, it'll be 10 years in a couple of years. You know,
10 years?
I was 15 at the time.
Oh.
So, you know, I don't know how that's going to go. You know, that was long ago. That's why I'm okay talking about it now, because I actually had the police come round to my house, do further interviews, etc. But yeah, so, you know, whilst that happens, furry community in general is brilliant. A lot of the stuff is great. A lot of them are friendly, etc. But I can't rid that terrible experience I had. You know, just look at the way I'm struggling to talk right now. You know, I don't know what to say. I have a lot of friends who are furry, but I can't erase that part of the history, which drove me to, first of all, create Imperial Atheist, not because I was British, before someone says. It was Imperial Atheist because I was an Imperial Guard player back then. I collected Warhammer 40,000 Imperial Guards, one of the factions. Imperial Atheist just came to me. Then it became Essence of Thought. That's how I came to be here. So yeah, furry community in general, I like a lot of their music. Carl the Raven's great. I like a lot of the art. Really like a lot of the art. I, again, read several webcomics. I'm typically not one to read webcomics unless it involves some form of anthropomorphic character. Yeah, I enjoy them. They're good. I like furries in general. Just sad my experience with that one aspect of the community on YouTube. Again, this was years ago, so it's probably completely changed the dynamic.
As a humanist, how would you value extraterrestrial life compared to yours, compared to humans?
Consciousness, desire, consent, etc. Same usual thing I talk about when it comes to you know, animals, other animals, I should say, our fellow animals on this planet. This is just one of those ethical questions that you've got to sort of look at it. And I understand it gets complicated when you talk about a hive mind. You know, it comes to, all I can think of when it comes to the hive mind is like the creature with 1,000 backs from, or is it 1,000,000 backs from Futurama, where it's like everyone loves the same creature sort of thing. But yeah, again, it's just look into their level of consciousness, awareness, etc. I assume if they've got here, then they've got some ability to, you know, at least invent. So that's a degree of consciousness, definitely a higher cognitive ability. So yeah, I get like the feeling like this is one of those people that's trying to ask, you know, is it okay for people to have sex with aliens? That's a very common question we hear, and again, it all comes down to
probably read Eric von Daniken's work, although it's full of fabricated stuff.
It all comes down to kind of creature consent. Essence of Thought, do you ever visit Speaker's Corner? Again, no. I'm in India. Back then, didn't really travel that much. I don't really hold, you know, I adore what the people at Speaker's Corners do, but it's not my thing. It's not what I particularly enjoy. They're far ahead of the formal live debates that we see being paraded about. You know, I'd rather watch a Speaker's Corner video than I would a live formal debate. But yeah, just not my thing.
Okay, so Blob Dark Ass. Today is Easter. How come bunnies can only lay eggs today? No, they don't lay eggs today. We just paint them.
No, they know that it's a joke. It's a joke. Okay. You should. I should stop talking. Please speak about the Lawrence Krauss accusations and the reaction of the online atheist community. Thank you for your time. In general, it's been pretty shit to the majority of it. I mean, the evidence is overwhelming to the degree that, you know, his response was pretty insulting. And then sadly, there are certain people out there who just want to double down and defend them. You know, I don't know what I can add. You know, people have come forward. They've opened up about their abuse by him. It's somewhat sad that we've lost Lawrence Krauss. But what's even more sad is the fact that Lawrence Krauss abused their situation to assault women in such a manner. That's the tragedy. That's the way the sorrow is. So it shouldn't be like, well, what should we do in the community, you know, about Lawrence Krauss accusations? It should be, okay, how do we prevent this from happening in future? What can we do to ensure that this doesn't go on? Right. You have silhouettes of Professor Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens in your channel banner. What are your greatest disagreements with both of them? Do you have anything you want to say?
No.
Okay, with me,
I don't think I'm knowledgeable.
Hitchens a bit of a sexist prick.
Yeah.
I like the way that he discusses women's position in society, also the way that he discusses abortion. I know he had that whole thing of, I disagree with abortion, but I will still allow it because I can't force a woman to, you know, a woman or a person to carry a fetus. But still, it's very troubling. It's sort of like dabbling on the edge. Why can't you just focus on, you know, the aspect of a woman, trans man's, or non-binary individual's bodily autonomy? There are issues I have with them. Richard Dawkins kind of goes between smart comments to being a bit of a joke.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, I remember he was genuinely angry at the fact that when traveling to Australia, he got stopped for honey. Now, he claimed that this was ridiculous, you know, anti-Islamic protocol. No, it's because Australia has very tight borders when it comes to foreign foods, and honey, I can understand why, because foreign funguses that can actually survive in honey, because honey is, it kills most things, but there are certain funguses that can survive in that. If a foreign fungus comes in, that infects the local bees, completely decimates the population. That's why. It was nothing to do with Islam, but he was making such a big issue out of it. It's like, why? Again, you know, I should probably change my banner, but it's just, I haven't got down to it really. I agree with a lot of Hitchens' work. Again, it's mostly the stuff that's quite sexist. It seems to be a recurring theme. Richard Dawkins, again, you know, I say he takes things a bit too far sometimes, but then when I see that how I react when I get a DMCA notification, I can react quite aggressively as well for absolutely no reason. So maybe I shouldn't be the one to throw stones in a glass house, but yeah. Okay. Do you think William Lane Craig is a willful idiot or just a sad old twit? Why not both? William Lane Craig is someone who has let their notoriety get right to their head. That's something I can see. Like, he just repeats the same old routine, word for word, and that's it. It's literally his thing. Question, how long have you two been dating? You make a couple. Please go far into detail so I can check comments.
Yeah. Well, we've been dating since 2014, and we met at the Atheist Humanist Secularist Society.
Started by me.
It was started by you or Captain McCool?
Together. This is the thing. We were both creating the same society without knowing that the other person was doing it.
You started as the Skeptic Society, I think.
We just found out that there was also an old one which we could just reawaken and just change the name. It was easier to do it that way, so we did it that way.
Yeah, and I remember I was asking a lot of questions because yes, I did identify as an atheist, but I was still a secularist. But when it comes to humanism, or when it comes to, atheist issues in the West, I was very ignorant of it. And I remember asking like so many questions, and this person thought that maybe I was going to be a pain in their ass.
Yeah, you sometimes get those theists who just come along and they're just asking questions, and it seems like they're asking them not out of good faith, but generally just to be a pain in your ass. I honestly thought about that. I wondered if that was why, if that was why she was sort of coming there, sort of this troll almost. But no, she just had genuine questions, and it proved me wrong, and we turned out to be very good friends. And
we also had our first fight as friends. I mean, that's probably one of the. It might sound bad, but it was actually a good thing for me, because I believe in being friends first with the person that you're going to date, because that's only how you know their positives or negatives from a neutral standpoint. And the fact that we had a fight, probably our biggest fight when we were friends, I knew how to deal with this person. That's when we made up, that's I knew how to deal with this person. He knew how to deal with me. They knew how to deal with me. And I think, I don't even know when we started dating, but it just did one day. Hey, it's been good so far. Up and down, but good.
Okay. I've got the thoughts on the furry fandom. I've currently lost question track.
There is somebody who asked me,
why do you question? Oh, go ahead if you know what the question is. Yeah.
Somebody who was asking, why do you want to learn Dutch? Because it's difficult.
Go answer it then. Go ahead.
You're the person.
No, you answer it. No, you're the one who's learning it more. Go answer.
Well, I'm learning Dutch. Well, this person's half Dutch.
Yeah.
And I kind of have. I'm kind of learning Spanish. And I wanted to learn another European language. And I thought, why not Dutch? Because I actually know people I can speak to. Plus, I thought, because this is within the family, and, I recently met this one's Dutch side, many of whom either don't speak English, or they speak a very, what do you call it? A very... not sanitized, a very simplistic version of English. So that's when I realized that I really need to learn that, because between the both of us, I was the one who's probably better at learning languages, because you
are the one better at learning languages. It's your ability. I don't have.
I'm not saying I'm a polyglot, but I was trilingual. So for me, my brain has 3 foundation languages to refer to when I'm learning a 4th or a 5th one, unlike this one. And I thought, if I learn Dutch, then this one can learn it, and then we can both practice. But I'm going ahead with it a little fast.
So I've genuinely tried languages. Everyone has things that they don't do very well. I've picked up certain things, scriptural arguments, little tidbits here about different fields of science. That's what I can pick up relatively well. Language, not my forte, definitely not. And I have genuinely tried, because one of the great fears that I have is this idea that I won't ever be able to have a conversation with my grandmother. I've never had a conversation with her. You know, so it's not laziness, and it's something that I actually lie awake beating myself up about. I'm trying, slowly doing stuff, not enough probably, but yeah. So.
It's also, I think it's on a, okay, it's going to sound again cheesy, but I also thought one day, after seeing this one, that if we are ever to have children, they will be part Dutch. And I would like them to know about their Dutch heritage. Just as much as I'd like them to know about their heritage from my side. So, hey.
That's a good question. Do you think trans people who pass and prefer to go stealth, are we doing a disservice to the trans community by not being a good example, being an activist? For those who don't know what passing is a survival term. Survival term used by trans people to say, am I likely to be picked out of a crowd for being trans? Stealthing is if you pass, just go through life and no one realizes that you are trans. As to answer the question, no. Your life is not belonging to us. And whilst I would say, you know, consider helping trans people, other trans people, again, your life doesn't belong to us. You know, trans people face so much crap, so much abuse, so much horrendous stuff. If you need to go stealth and take care of yourself, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. People, look, humanism, we should all do our best to help out other people. But at the same time, you know, we need to learn to also take care of ourselves sometimes. You can't always give. You do need to sometimes say, actually, I can't do this, you know. There are times when you want to help out, but you don't have the energy, you don't have the capacity, and you need to take care of yourself. You know, first and foremost, your life needs to be taken care of. So never feel pressured, never feel bad, never feel like you're betraying or anything like that. You're not, okay? It's someone who needs to stealth, and it's, you know, it's giving them the life they want, and I fully support that. I'm very happy for them, okay? People fill out different roles, okay? There will always be people who will do the opposite and, you know, focus their entire lifetime on dealing with trans issues. So don't worry, you know, if that's not your thing, then just be a good trans person having a good life, okay? That's all. Is there anything you want to add?
I don't think I should be speaking on
this. You can add thoughts.
No, I shouldn't. I mean, the only thing I can add is not as a, well, I'm a cis person, but as somebody who's from within the queer community, is that I believe in integration, and I think the best way to integrate or to put forward integration is when people don't really care anymore whether you're, you know, transgender or not. So I mean, it's your safety first, and if you don't choose to do something activism-wise, it's still fine, because sometimes casual representation is enough. The very fact that you know, that you are you and you're surviving is quite a lot. I don't want to really say anything beyond that.
Yeah, I'm just looking for questions now. Okay, what are your thoughts on the view that homosexual acts are natural because the genitalia are not being used for their final cause, i.e. sperm not being used for procreation? Our entire biology just doesn't scream that. You know, we've got tiny testicles, tiny sperm, we're ridiculous, you know, with our genitalia is not evolved primarily for that. That plays a role. Where our genitalia is evolved, however, is for pleasure. Okay, so that argument just falls apart altogether, sort of thing. And I think it's a good thing. I enjoy the pleasure. It's a great pleasure. Oh God, we've been trying to do a once a month podcast. Okay. Also, sorry if the but yeah, I've talked about lots of baby fur / cubs, but oh my God, their art is amazing. But yeah. Also, have you heard of secular talk? secular talk. I'm trying to think about who. There's so many names for secular, and then there's so many groups out there that I'm trying to just map it down. Yeah, I know of them. But I can't put a face to them at the moment. That's the problem. I'm not the best with names. Again, Jordan Peter. Okay. Okay, let's check if the. Oh God, the comments are still going on. Oh, what's the difference between the YouTube atheist community between when I started and now?
Oh. I wasn't there when it started, so
this is
probably not
this
the
is
best
before you. This is before you.
Yeah, I'm very new to YouTube.
It was easier to start out. That I can vouch to, starting the new channel, even with the, being able to spam my old channel with the stuff from the new channel is very hard still. Like I say, it was easier starting out the old channel. And that's not something that necessarily affects just the atheist community, but it's any YouTube community. I'm trying to think, because of course there's clear divides, but then again, is that necessarily a terrible thing? I don't think so. I say the community's matured in a lot of ways, and that's not to say individuals within the community are mature. That's to say that like overall it's gone through a lot of different stages, a lot of different challenges, and it has grown, it has adapted, it has changed. I'm happy with some of the work that I've seen certain people carry out. Holy Kool-Aid, for example, has a secret group. Secret group for YouTube creators, atheist YouTube creators. I'm spoiling the secrets here. The conspiracy is coming to life. But yeah, it's like the networking there I haven't seen in a long time. I mean, I remember back when I was young and naive, I had, I think it was 150 subscribers at the time, and I set up the Atheist Hub. And I used to the Atheist Hub was a centralized channel which people could submit their own content and we'd mirror it for them. Now, none of the admins posted their own content, and it exploded. Before we knew it, we had 2,000 subscribers on that channel. For someone who had 100, 500 subscribers on their channel, managing a channel for other people with 2,000 subscribers, it was kind of a funny thing, but we still did it because we felt it's like, great, atheist communities get it going. People have had to diversify. That's something. Go to the video Atheism 2.0, and I think it's made really well that you can't base any sort of community around an absence of theistic belief. You need more than that. And whilst people say you can't have more than that, it's always been more than that. Secularism isn't inherent from a lack of belief in God. There's nothing about church-state separation that is called upon by a lack of theism. That right there is upholding the human right of, freedom from religion. So if we can acknowledge that bit, I'm sure we can start acknowledging other areas of human rights. So, I fully support that, and it's just one of those things that's going to happen. The community is going to exist in whatever way it does, for better or for worse. So, yeah. Okay.
Any insight into why there has been a rise in white supremacist rhetoric? I don't think there's been a rise. I think it was always there. It's just
the rhetoric has become more mainstream, and that amplifies it. It's become more mainstream because it's an emboldening factor. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. This is why I like edited videos. You don't get to see me stumbling. I stumble quite a bit. With the election Trump, with Brexit, and so many other things, they're feeling emboldened, which is why it's been brilliant to see recently that, a lot of the alt-right leaders are saying, it's not actually fun to do talks anymore because the Antifa has actually made it unfun to do talks these days. So thankfully, they're starting to regress, it seems. It's like Antifa has defended the taboo, which, debating issue has not been able to defend. It's a sad fact, but yeah, violence defended democracy. But again, that's early. just like Richard Spencer saying that he no longer wants to do debate. He no longer wants to do any sort of like talks because performance has dropped, rates of people attending have dropped, and B, they get their asses handed to them, you know. But yeah.
I also think it's a matter of escalation, right? So post World War II, there was a general awareness of why racism is bad, and you know there was that trend of tackling it. But then I think, as with most things, it stagnated, and then as more and more people of color started coming out with, you know, the sort of a casual racism, that not the in-your-face racism that used to have, the casual racism that we face, it started being used as kind of a method. Like that's exactly when the white supremacist side decided to use that as a rhetoric to, you know, trivialize racism issues. I mean, these days it's not so much as, you know, oh, if you're black, you're not going to sit with me in this side of the bus. It's more like, well, if you're black, I'm going to hold certain stereotypes about you, and I'm going to stick to it.
Anyway, I think this will have to be it, because I've been going on for a couple hours now.
Could we tackle? I'll take this one.
Yeah,
Could we tackle the homophobia
finding? Tackle it. You tackle it.
Minority religious groups. Yes, you can.
Questions are closed.
Yes, you can. But when you do it, try not trampling on minority issues. I mean, I recently found somebody who, this is not homophobia, but somebody who is Jewish and is an Ashkenazi Jew. I'm new to this term, but yes, and they're in what do you call it? Like they're the opposite of intactivists. They're pro circumcision, but they're okay in every other sense. And to them, it's like you're trampling on the Jewish rights, and you know we're a minority, and it's just another form of anti-Semitism. But the thing is, it's not about, I mean, when I'm tackling with people like this, it's like, it's not about your religion only, it's about somebody's bodily autonomy. I mean, just because you're a minority religion doesn't mean your religious path has to be the correct one.
Mm-hmm. So yes,
I think it's the same thing with homophobia.
9 o'clock here. We started at 6:30. We've talked for 2.5 hours. And I guess we're probably going to have to do another show then. There were other questions, but we just don't have the time. We need to wrap up.
Some of these questions we can.
Some of these questions are great. We will take them down for next time.
And we can also do videos on them.
We'll do whatever we need to do to answer them. And we're sorry that, you know, we couldn't do more, but hopefully people have enjoyed. And yeah, we'll see about doing more in future or whatever. So yeah, thank you. Take care now. And it's now that I realise that the stop broadcast button is on the computer over there. We've got the laptop down here. We've got the desktop up there. So I'm going to disappear stage right.
I can do that. It's
okay. It's just the big red stop broadcast button. Okay. Oh God. Take care, people.